Hi, I'm Brian Finley, and I'm just about to have a delicious chicken dinner with my good friend Larry Beckwith here. And Larry's the artistic director of the Toronto Masque Theatre, and Larry is bringing down to Westben Dido and Aeneas, production of Dido and Aeneas this year on behalf of the Toronto Masque Theatre. And he's going to be talking about it at our TikToks coming up on the 23rd of this month. And so it's just great to have you sitting in the kitchen.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Yeah.
So I just had a pile of questions about Purcell and about Dido and Aeneas and all this kind of stuff. First of all, about the Toronto Masque Theatre. What's a masque? What should we expect?
Well, we do a wide variety of different kinds of shows. We are inspired by the masque tradition, which brings together different performing arts disciplines, primarily music and theater and dance.
Yeah, great.
And it came about, though, from a slightly odd area where, because I loved these pieces by Purcell and by Handel, and they called them, both Purcell and Handel called them masques. These are pieces like Dido and Aeneas and the Fairy Queen and King Arthur and Acis and Galatea of Handel. And
so what did they mean when they said masque?
Well, I think they meant. I mean, it was a very English, they were coming at it from a very English point of view, even though the art form itself has its roots in Italy, in the Renaissance. But Ben Jonson, of course, in the early part of the 17th century, was known for his writing of masques and using various composers and scenic artists and dancers to create these lavish evenings of the performing arts. And I think Purcell was inspired by that idea, as was Handel. But there's a very close relationship in that time, the late 17th, early 18th century, between masque and opera. So we tread perilously close to
because
opera for sure.
Well, opera sort of coexisted with masque at the same time.
It did. Yeah.
So what sort of is the difference?
Well, that's an excellent question.
Thank you. It's one of my own.
I think that that masque can involve a lot more spoken word if it needs to,
right?
And it can also play a bit fast and loose with plot. So one definition of the masque is an evening that investigates a certain theme, like a masque of love or a masque of peace or a masque of. And that would bring together readings and music and songs from all sorts of disparate areas. And we've done these kinds of evenings before.
Right. Well, what are people going to see when they come to Dido and Aeneas?
Well, they'll see a fantastic cast of singers,
yeah,
and
sure.
we're delighted to have Lauren Siegel and Alex Dobson in the title roles, and a whole host of other wonderful singers. I think Dido is a perfect, I mean, I'll call it an opera. I think it's one of the most perfect operas in that it is short.
It's in English too.
It's in English.
Which is important.
And it's a tremendously poignant story that is given depth by Purcell's very appealing and simple but crafty settings, musical settings.
What are the masque sort of elements in this? Like, if you had to say what this is a masque about?
Yeah, I would say so. It's a masque about royalty. It's a masque about witchcraft. It's a masque about love. And it brings in. I mean, what they love to do with masques is bring in mythological references and allusions as well. Dido and Aeneas, of course, comes from Ovid's Metamorphoses, so it's a very, very old story. And Nahum Tate, who was the librettist of the opera, just put together a very economical libretto that is very poetic, but tells the story in a very direct and poignant way, I think.
Well, and the circumstances that this was originally written for? I mean, Purcell wasn't an old man. He never was an old man.
He was never an old man. And he was sort of the equivalent to Mozart, I guess.
Yeah, I
he died when he
suppose.
was 35,
And came along at a great time in history.
he really did. I mean, he was born right at the end of the English Civil War, so he was trained up by some of the most underutilized and talented teachers and composers who had been out of work for 15 or 20 years prior, or working underground anyway. People like Pelham Humphrey and John Blow and composers that we don't necessarily, that aren't household names.
Right.
But they must have been great teachers because he learned very quickly, and he credited them as training him.
Well, it is a dazzlingly beautiful score,
Yeah.
isn't it? It
Yeah.
really is a poignant and beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And it does have this sort of suspension of feeling and idea,
Yeah.
in it that probably developed into interesting things. But well, tell us, you're doing a TikTok
Yes.
on this at the Clock Tower
Yeah.
coming up in a
Yeah.
couple of weeks on the 23rd. What's that going to look like?
Well,
what are you going to do for that?
I'm bringing two young singers, Lizzie Hetherington and Jessica Wright, who are both students at the University of Toronto.
Excellent.
And they're going to be part of the little semi-chorus for Dido when we do it here in July.
Oh, when you do the full production.
But they're going to come and they're going to sing some of the famous arias and
Excellent.
duets from the opera. And I hope to give people a kind of fulsome idea of the story and of Purcell's biography in a way.
Excellent. Great.
And also just to give them a wider idea of what they're going to see when we perform it in July. I mean, one sort of essential element that I always talk about with Toronto Masque Theatre is that we're not trying to historically recreate something. I mean, I think some people get a little scared when they hear the word masque. They think, oh well, maybe this is taking us back to the 17th century, and we're all going to be. In fact, it's a very modern approach,
Yeah.
and so I think one of the beautiful things about the masque is that it's so intimate and direct.
Well, it's kind of a timeless form as well, too,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
And it can work for any generation and any.
I think so.
Speaks to
I
any
think so.
generation.
And having just seen the barn where we're going to
Yeah.
be performing, I think
Yeah,
it's a
what do you think?
perfect
It's
perfect
good-
venue
good
for yeah. So I think the audience can expect some very direct interaction.
Wow, we're going to have
with
a
the
great
singers,
time. And
especially
the Westben Festival Chorus is going to be singing along with
I'm
you too, and we're
very much
pumped.
looking forward to
Yeah,
that.
we're
Yep.
sure looking forward to that
Yeah.
too. Well,
Oh, that'll be great.
it's going to be really great. Well, thank you so much for being our guest, and we're so looking forward to having you back in town to do the show, and it's going to be just another fantastic and very, very moving thing, and it's a real honor and a treat to have the Toronto Masque Theatre with us too. So
Well,
thanks a lot, Larry.
thank you, Brian. I look
And
forward
you're a musician yourself too.
I
Just as an
dabble.
aside,
I dabble.
But
Yes,
I think
that's
Larry's
right.
going to be playing as well too on the TikTok.
Yes.
Baroque
Yes.
violinist.
Yeah.
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 So what's the difference between a Baroque violinist and a wedding violinist?
Well, that's a big question. I mean,
Well, you have to come and find out.
Yes,
Maybe
exactly,
Maybe
exactly.
that's the answer. Anyway, we'll be doing some stuff at
Yeah.
the TikTok, but
Yeah.
but I think it's time for our chicken dinner. So
Okay.
Anyway, it's good to have you with us. Have a good night.